All right, guys. This is my last video for you this semester on this is on health. So I'm looking at my other computer over here and kind of looking at the chapters I'm talking to you. I'm looking at chapter 19, the social construction of health. And when you get into that chapter online, I'm looking at the section 19.1, and then I'm going to look at just kind of other highlights throughout this chapter, because health is one of those, it's just one of those chapters. So anyway, remember to watch the whole video as I'm going to give you several assignment topics throughout. Make sure that you upload this assignment by the time the due date comes. So when we're looking at health and medicine, we're looking at, healthcare in general. And usually when we're talking about healthcare in general, we're talking about mainstream healthcare, medical doctors, hospitals, that sort of stuff. And one of the issues with healthcare is always, as Goffman talks about, this idea of the stigma that comes along with certain things with healthcare, the judgments that we make about people with healthcare. So going back in time when most of you were probably not even around yet, if you're a traditional college age student, if you go back in time to when HIV and AIDS first started, that was a time, late 70s, early 80s, that we didn't know much about it. We didn't know what being HIV positive meant. And in the beginning, HIV was seen, quite honestly, as the gay white man's disease. It tended to hit initially the gay population. Now we know obviously that can be passed to anybody, but when it first started, it was seen as the gay white man's disease. And the stigma with that was that if you were gay, you were going to get AIDS. And I mean, there were groups that were just and usually religious groups that were yelling and screaming and at people with that were HIV positive, telling them that it was God's intent, and that being gay was not something that God supported, and so this was God's payback. But if you were, for example, a woman who ended up HIV positive, and a lot of women at that time were HIV positive, if they needed, or a lot of people in general, if they needed a blood transfusion, it was before we screened for HIV because we didn't know to screen for it. A lot of people were ending up HIV positive because of blood transfusions. And the minute that somebody said that they, were HIV positive because of a transfusion, oh, okay, now it's not so bad. Oh, okay, you didn't get HIV from unsafe practices, unsafe sexual practices, but oh, you got it because you were had a transfusion. And the stigma of that changes. So that's what Goffman talks about with what they call the stigmatization of illness, that the greatest effect on the patient, often has the greatest effect on the patient and the kind of care they receive. Mental disorders, sexually transmitted diseases, etc., often have a stigma, and therefore, intently or not, are treated and medically treated in a different way. In that same chapter, in that same section there, that 19.1 section, we talk about it talks about how illness is socially constructed. And, what they mean there is what in our society kind of plays into how we see a disease. And if you scroll down, there's the pain management scale. That's the 0, no pain, 10, the worst pain ever. And a lot of times that scale is used for kids when it's hard for them to explain their pain. And, that's one thing that has come up to try to help healthcare providers assess, pain management. But when we talk about, now you can read about the breast cancer awareness section, and we're not intending any disrespect to anybody that has breast cancer. I am very sensitive to cancer issues. My mom died of skin cancer that metastasized to her brain. I'm very sensitive to that. I encourage you to read that, because there's been a lot of controversy over the breast cancer awareness campaigns in general, and a lot of the controversy over where the money goes, and does the money go to the executives, and is it really going to breast cancer, and all of that kind of stuff. And you can read that. What I do want to jump to is hang on just a second, I got to find my right section here, is looking at so it's 19.5 in your text, looking at the theoretical perspectives of healthcare, and what again, we're looking at functionalism, complex symbolic interaction, and even feminist theory about how we look at, even though feminist theory is not included in your chapter, one of the things that we look at with feminist theory is always, how women are not seen on the same level as men, or women are not seen as important as men. And one of the things with women's health care comes, again, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody that has religious or personal beliefs for or against contraception. It's just an example. There are many health insurance plans that will not cover birth control for women for whatever reason, but they would cover a vasectomy for men. So hopefully you know what a vasectomy is. If not, look it up. But it's a way to help the man no longer be able to have children. But there are a lot of medical insurances that will not cover oral birth control, oral contraception for women. There are a lot of insurances that may not cover if a woman wants her tubes tied, or whatever. There's many times with women's health as well, insurance will not allow a physician to do a hysterectomy if a woman is too young and still of childbearing years. Now, the doctor may decide that as well, but if there are, reasons why, medical reasons why a woman may want a hysterectomy, so maybe it's an irregular cycle or heavy bleeding or whatever it is, they may not do that. They may not want to tie a woman's tubes so she can no longer have children. And the thing about birth control for women is almost all the birth control for women was designed by men. So again, it's the feminist issue of, and we're not going to go there with healthcare. We're not going to debate this issue. And I'm not trying to start an issue, but it is one of the topics of women's healthcare is a patient's right to make own decisions for their own body. And, of course, one of those issues tends to be a woman's right or not to end a pregnancy if that pregnancy is not wanted. And, there's lots of controversy on both sides, but yet, we, with our aging population, someone has to be without sound mind before we can make a medical decision for them about their care. They have to be unable to make a decision, especially with our elderly. And so a lot of times you'll find with the women's healthcare field that a right to end a pregnancy is a lot of people see it as a woman's right to make a decision about her own healthcare and her own body. But it's one of the issues that tends to be one of those hot topics about, is it her right or not? And again, I'm not trying to start a whole big debate or push you one way or another. It is just an issue for women's healthcare. So that's a feminist perspective of looking at how women's healthcare, how women are treated, just from that perspective, how that is something within the medical field. When we look at functionalism, we look at the sick role, and Talcott Parsons talked about the sick role is what is appropriate behavior for someone that is sick, and and for those who take care of them. I know when my mom was nearing the end of her life, I was still at school. I was still working. She was home with hospice. She was with my dad. They were doing things their way. And yet people still thought that I should be taking time off work to be at my parents 24/7, 365. Wasn't what my parents wanted. My dad wanted to be in control of that situation when my mom could no longer make decisions. We had hospice in there. I mean, this is what they wanted. But yet, my people around me and says, oh, why aren't you taking off time? Why aren't you going and sitting there with her? That's what you're supposed to do when your parent is at the end of their life. And it wasn't what my parents wanted. My sister and I both worked up until the night before she passed away. But that's what we talk about with the sick role is, what is that expectation in society? What is that expectation? Pre-COVID, the expectation was you have a little bit of a runny nose, you go to school. You're not sick enough to stay home. COVID kind of changed that. What was the expectation that if you have a runny nose, like now, I know the pollen count is out of control right now. And I'm sniffly and my daughter's sniffly. Have I actually been diagnosed with allergies? No. Do they happen every year at this time? Yes. But if I go to school a year and a half ago with a runny nose, I go home because everybody thought I had COVID. So when we talk about the sick role, we talk about what are the expectations from society based on what is going on medically, whether it's you or it's you as the patient or you as a family member. And this talks about Parsons, the sick person has a specific role, both with rights and responsibilities. And your textbook says to start with, the sick person is not chosen to be sick and should not be treated as responsible for their condition. So I do think that was one of the good things about COVID was it allowed us to kind of say take time off. So what I want you guys to do for this question, I told you what functionalism and feminism are. I want you to tell me what the conflict perspective and what the symbolic interaction perspective would say about medical and healthcare in society. All right. Have a good day.